Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Wednesday webinar, Meet the Colleges, Conversations with Florida Regional Admissions Counselors, FRAC. This is our second session, College Case Studies. My name is Kathy Hart. I'm an educational consultant with SCORE at the top learning centers and schools. Before we get started, FRAC has shared some handouts with us that you may wish to download and view during the case studies presentation. It'll help make it make a little bit more sense. And you can find those handouts in the GoToWebinar control panel. Click on the plus next to the handouts, and then you should be able to see them. There are 5 handouts total. So you'll see the college profile, the student profiles, and some other handouts that'll help you understand what FRAC is going to be sharing with us this evening. If you experience any audio difficulties, go ahead and you can dial in to the webinar. Just click on the plus next to the audio and then follow the directions. And of course, if there are any, we always will send a link to our webinar, and you can always view our webinars at your convenience at any time from scorewebinars.com. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll get started with session 2. I'm just going to introduce FRAC and our presenters, and then I'm going to turn it over to them. Tonight, we're going to look at what makes a strong college application through college case studies, looking at what's behind the scenes for decisions of admit, waitlist, and deny. And if you weren't able to view last week's webinar, I highly recommend it. FRAC is a group of regional admissions counselors who live and work in the state of Florida, but who represent out-of-state colleges. So these are all out-of-state schools, and they serve as a resource for Florida high school students and high school counselors who would like more information about higher educational opportunities outside the state of Florida. Last week we had 16 reps with us, and each of them gave a brief overview of their school, including information about popular majors, mid 50%, some information about testing and or test optional, test blind. And to see the complete list of schools, there are over 20 of them, as well as the names of the representatives and contact information. Please visit their website, wearefrac.org. And I'm going to just introduce our presenters for this evening. So we have 6 with us tonight, and so excited. All right, so we have Benet Bondi, has more than 20 years of admissions and student affairs experience at private and public institutions throughout the Southeast. She worked for Jacksonville University and later St. Leo University, where she rose to the position of Associate Director of Admissions. Later, she served as admissions counselor and acting director of graduate admission for the School of Nursing at Duke. Following relocating to Florida, Bennett worked in career services before returning to admissions as a regional recruiter in Central Florida for the University of Alabama, a position she has held for the last 10 years. She and her husband live in Tampa. Benet earned a BA degree from Flagler College and a master's in education in college student affairs from the University of South Florida. Loren Rambo is the Senior Assistant Director of Admissions and Southeastern Regional Rep at Bucknell University. She has been part of Bucknell's admissions team since graduating from there in 2012. Loren resides in Tallahassee and works with students from all across the Southeastern United States. Born and raised in Ponce, Puerto Rico, Marilyn Amato moved to Washington, D.C. to attend Catholic University. After working in DC for a few years, she attended law school in Pontificia Universidad Católica de Puerto Rico, a Miami resident for more than 20 years. She has been working for her alma mater since 2012. Payton Spears, the Florida Regional Admissions Counselor at the University of Mississippi. He is a graduate of Ole Miss and has been working for the university for the past 2 years in his current position. As a native of Southern California, he understands the decision and process of attending a university out of state and distant from home. Stephanie Creaseman is currently the regional representative for the University of South Carolina for students in the state of Florida. She has been with the university for 4 years. She began her admissions career in 2000 and has worked for various schools, ranging from large state flagships to small public liberal arts universities. And then we have Monica Soboleski is the Regional Assistant Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Temple University. She has her Bachelor's of Science degree in Psychology and an elementary teaching certification. She was a 4th grade teacher for 6 years in Annapolis, Maryland, and then moved into higher education. The 2020-2021 fall travel cycle will be her 6th year in admissions, with experience at both a private institution and now a large public institution at Temple University. She resides in West Palm Beach, Florida, and has been with Temple University since October 2019. Her territory is the entire state of Florida and Puerto Rico, and she reviews first-year applications for admissions. All right, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to turn the presentation over to FRAC. And I believe Loren will be sharing hers.
Okay. Hi, everyone. How are you doing? We are so excited to have you all joining us. As part of tonight's programming, we're going to walk you through a couple of applications and give you the chance to see how they're viewed within an admissions committee. So this evening, as part of this activity, all of us, even though we represent different universities today, we all represent Plymouth Shores University. So we're going to go through the 3 applications, have some discussion amongst ourselves, and then we will be voting as a small committee here to admit 1 student, waitlist 1 student, and deny 1 student. After that, we'll open it up for questions from you all and see how you feel about the process after this. So I'm going to turn it over to Monica now to walk us through some information about Plymouth Shores University.
Okay, so Plymouth Shores University is a private liberal arts research university founded in 1826, located in Sunburyport, Massachusetts. PSU, that's our acronym, is one of our world's premier research universities. We have 3 top professional schools in business, medicine, and engineering. We offer over 200 programs in the arts, social and natural sciences, as well as humanities. Our mission statement is to educate students and cultivate their capacity for lifelong learning, to foster independent and original research, and to bring the benefits of discovery to the world with a commitment to social justice and service of others. We have about 6,276 undergraduate students on campus and about 2,100 graduate students. We have students that represent all 50 states and 85 different countries, and most students do live on campus all 4 years. We have a 15-to-1 student faculty to ratio. We also participate in 2 parts of NCAA. So NCAA Division I sports in men's and women's lacrosse, as well as men's and women's track and field. All of our other sports at our university are NCAA Division III. Last year's class at Plymouth Shores University, we had 19,300 students that applied. We had 7,011 students that were admitted, and then 1,872 students that enrolled at PSU. There are 2 applications that you should be aware of at PSU. Our early action deadline is November 15th, and then our regular decision deadline is January 15th. Our admitted student profile looks like this. Our mid 50% GPA is a 3.49 between a 3.49 and a 3.92. That is based on the unweighted, recalculated GPA that we do at PSU. And then mid 50% SAT is 1380 to 1480, and mid 50% ACT is a 29 through 32. Required documents for applicants applying to PSU is the Common App, your essay, a writing supplement, as well as the secondary school report, which is a counselor letter of recommendation, as well as a teacher letter recommendation, transcripts that show your grades 9th through 12th, your official report from either SAT, College Board, or ACT. We do super score SAT. We only take the highest composite ACT score. Interviews conducted by an admissions officer or an alumni are available and strongly encouraged. Our admissions committee is need aware. Admissions is based on a holistic review, so we're looking at academic credentials, your character, your personal qualities, your extracurricular activities that you partake in. Our admitted students are automatically considered for academic scholarships. Our tuition and fees at PSU undergraduate tuition is about $48,444. Room and board and fees $16,756. So that gives you a grand total of $65,200. For financial aid, free application for federal student aid is required, as well as a CSS profile. And then we at PSU meet student full need, and then about 78% of our undergraduate students receive some type of scholarship and or need-based financial aid. So that gives you kind of a little bit of an overview about our institution as we go into looking at some applications coming up. Back to you, Loren.
Great, thanks, Monica. So when we're thinking about the applicants later, as we have our discussion, you might hear us refer back to this page as we think about what does Plymouth Shores University need and look for in their applicants. So this kind of information is things that you can find about the schools you're interested in and should help you see how you fit within their profile. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie, who's going to talk to us a little bit about what we might see in the application and what we're going to be looking for. Stephanie?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different things when we're looking at applications to really make a decision and make up our freshman class. So first of all, we're going to look at, and it says in there it could take you 20 minutes, depending on how much you've actually read. It can take you anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes, 5 minutes to 20 minutes. It just kind of depends how much information the student puts in there, how in-depth their personal statements are, which we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But some of the things that we're going to be looking for, we're looking for your personal information. So is there anything that stands out? Has a family member been, is a family member an alumni? Are there special circumstances that we need to be aware of? Has a student ever been suspended or received disciplinary action from their high school? Yes, all of that information is asked on an application. So make sure that you do include that, because that's a problem later on in the future. Next, we're going to look at transcripts. What kind of grades do these students have? Are they having an upward trend or a downward trend? Are they challenging themselves academically? Have they taken honors classes, AP classes, dual enrollment courses? We're going to look at the high school profile if it's available to kind of tell us, okay, well, if a student only has 2 AP exams or 2 AP courses, does the school only offer a limited number of APs? That's also really important. We're going to look at the extracurricular activities. If it's listed on the transcript, typically it won't be. And then we're going to also look to see where the student is ranked in their class. So that's kind of important to look at as well. Some scholarships will look at class rank as part of the admissions decision and also scholarship. The other thing we're going to look at, SAT, ACT, and then some schools are going to look at the subject test. So we're going to look to see, you know, are they meeting the profile? Where do they fall within the profile of our college? Are they within the range? You know, is the grade point average lower, significantly lower than what the test scores are? So, you know, you can have test scores that are through the roof and a grade point average that's like not so good. So that's kind of what we're going to be looking at there. Activities, you know, how involved is the student? Is the student participating in clubs and organizations that may lead to their major that they're looking at? For example, if you have an engineering student that's in a robotics class, is that something that's going to translate? You know, have they been in 15 clubs and organizations, but have very little leadership in each one of those, and only have done something an hour 1 week out of the year. So that's what we're going to be looking at. And then we're also going to use that to see how engaged the students are when they come to campus. Are they going to be part of our university campus? Or are they going to be leaders on the campus? Another thing that we're going to look at is obviously the essay. The essay, I tell students, this is your opportunity to really give us an idea as to what you're like outside of all the list of clubs and organizations that you are in and that you are doing. I will tell you, grammar, spelling, and punctuation, if you leave with nothing today, this is of the utmost importance. Proofread, proofread, proofread. Make sure that you don't have any of those grammatical errors in any of this. So, you know, and answer the prompt, you know, are they answering the prompt? And then the letters of recommendation. What are these letters of recommendation saying? Are they very vague? Did the student really tap into a teacher that they have worked with, that knows them academically, that can speak on that, speak on their capability of being a student at our university? So those are the things that we're looking for. So before I turn it back over to Loren, I'm going to also say this again. With your essay, proofread, proofread, proofread. Of nothing else, please. Remember that, and I'll turn it back over to Loren.
Stephanie, I feel like there's maybe an applicant who didn't take that advice in tonight's exercise. So that's a lot of information. Yeah, there's a ton of information that we're looking at, that we're considering, and if we tie all that into what Monica shared with us about Plymouth Shores University, how can we possibly keep all of that in mind? Well, we're going to go through 3 applications at kind of admissions counselor speed. So a summary of the applicants, so you can see for yourself from these different pages, which you have access to as well. All these documents have been shared with all of you in this meeting. If you look at your side panel, you're able to pull these up for yourself too. But we're going to have 3 counselors go through and summarize like they would if they were presenting these candidates. So I'm going to turn it over to Benet, who's going to talk to us about Dory Olivia Johnson.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Benet. I'm going to be talking about Dory. I'm going to be profiling Dory today. So it's important to look at all aspects of the application, as Stephanie mentioned. So I'm going to kind of start with the student's background. Dory's from California. She's a dual citizenship between United States of America as well as Australia. She comes from a 2-parent household. Dad, mom are married, and she's got 2 siblings. Dad's a realtor and mom's a volunteer, so kind of a single income type family. She's got a demonstrated strong interest in writing and interested in majoring in journalism and communications. And she also indicated she has a strong interest in starting her own student blog, promoting positive body images. She received a few awards. The first was an editor-in-chief for the yearbook, and she, as well as a student award as well for a column for the newspaper. As far as her educational background, she attends a public high school, North Point High School, where 82% attend 4-year institutions. It also offers 27 AP courses, so a higher level academic public institution. She also took 4 core classes her senior year with 1 AP. So overall, she's taken 20 core classes in terms of her academic record, 5 honors and 2 AP. So she's kind of challenged herself, but also 2 AP as opposed to offering 27 AP courses, demanding but not completely high level rigor. As far as obviously indicating the academic record, you want to look at trends. So when I look at Dory's trends in terms of her transcript, we have the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. Her 9th grade and half of her 10th grade kind of raised red flags to me, and this is something you want to look at. So she looks like she struggled earlier on in her high school career and now is doing well her junior and senior year. So that's obviously a positive trend. So that kind of makes me think there's something going on in terms of her early struggles, and we find out a little bit later in her recommendation why. So that's something we want to look at in terms of trends. Her overall weighted GPA is 3.62. Her unweighted GPA is a 3.36. So she's a little bit below PSU's mid 50% GPA range. There is also some difference in terms of her test scores. something that a couple things that struck out to me in terms of her test scores. She took the SAT only once and the ACT only once, but there was kind of a discrepancy between her SAT and her ACT scores. Her SAT composite was a 1210 and her ACT was a 31, which her ACT was much higher than her average SAT score. So her ACTs also in PSU's, middle 50% range. As far as her activities goes, this kind of solidifies her interest in writing and blogging and as well as community service. Most of her activities are associated around her writing interest, yearbook, newspaper, blogging, and community service. She also has a part-time job her senior year. She highlighted some leadership positions, editor-in-chief, which I mentioned earlier before, as well as communications chair for one of the community service organizations she's involved in. Some other things to consider, she applied regular decision to PSU. She also has multiple contacts with campus and admissions representatives, including a campus tour. She attended a preview program, attended a high school visit, and a college fair. So those are all really strong indicators in terms of her interest level with PSU. She has 2 letters of recommendation. One's from a guidance counselor, the other's from an English teacher. The guidance counselor is from Jennifer Fish, her high school counselor. Something we also have to take into consideration when a student goes to public high school, the counselor's caseloads are much higher than if somebody attended a private institution. So her caseload, she kind of admitted, the counselor, that she has 500 students that she's responsible for. So she might not know her students as personally as well as some of the other guidance counselors in terms of her applicant pool. We also learned something very important in Jennifer Fish's recommendation letter, that early on Dory was diagnosed with ADD. And that was her earlier in her high school career. And that also kind of may explain the discrepancy in her early high school transcripts. She struggled earlier and then was diagnosed and was really able to manage that and really succeed after that diagnosis. She also is a first-generation student, which is something that was highlighted. That's important for the university to take into consideration in terms of diversity. And again, this also, the recommendation solidified once again our interest in blogging and writing. The other recommendation letters from Diane Wheeler, her teacher, her English teacher. This actually was a good recommendation letter because it really highlighted the personal connection the teacher had. It also was from a teacher that was academic interest and somebody that had her for multiple classes. So that's kind of a strong recommendation letter in my opinion. She also seemed to know the student better. She reveals students' personal qualities such as she's mature, a quick learner, strong work ethic, insightful, smart, and sweet. And she also indicates that Dory might be benefit from a small liberal institution such as PSU. As far as the essay, it was creative, it was well written. It also was about creating and developing her blog, The Real Girls in the Real World, and comparing Disney characters to promote positive self-image and worldview. And finally, some additional things to consider. Obviously, Dory has a demonstrated interest in PSU. She indicated she did her research, that she enhanced talking about the Learning Enhancement Center, which obviously with her AAD she'd benefit from. She also indicated that she has a strong interest in fashion journalism and communications, which we offer both of those majors. She also, as I mentioned, visited with a missions counselor, which we can be an advocate sometimes. She enjoyed a campus visit. She also mentioned the reason discrepancy for her lower SAT and ACT score. She was able to take the SAT before her ADD diagnosis, and afterwards she took the ACT untimed, so that she received extended time, which made a difference in terms of her scoring. And finally, she had an alumni interview who indicated she would be an excellent addition to PSU because she's outgoing and confident. So that's Dory.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Benny. Okay, we're going to move on to our next applicant. So I'm going to turn it over to Marilyn to talk about Marcela.
Okay, so Marcela Castillo, a few things that stand out from her application. She's Latina, she's female, she's bilingual, she goes to a private parochial school, meaning that classes are gonna be smaller. There are only 90 seniors in her class. Both parents have a bachelor's degree, so she is not a first-gen student. Parents are divorced. She took 5 AP courses, math, goes up to Calc AB. Her SAT is 1440, so she's between the range, and the ACT 29. The university is need aware. She is applying for financial aid, but they meet full need. Marcela is also an out-of-state student from California, and the university is in Massachusetts. In the activities, okay, so there's from the application, you see that she doesn't have a lot of activities, but something to consider and remember is not quality, it's quantity. She hits all the checks. She does community service, she has a paid job, she does sports, internship, she is a VP of an education club. If you look at the hours, she's very involved. Her activities take a lot of time from her, so it's a big commitment. She applied as a public health policy major. And her GPA weighted 3.33. When we go to her transcript, you're gonna see big drop sophomore year. And also you're gonna see grade 11, she's still, first semester, she's still lower, but going up. And then she has an amazing first semester senior year with 4 AP courses. Okay. Her essay, I did like her essay. It talks about her aunt who is dying of breast cancer, talks about her experience, it's quite personal. And from her essay, you can deduct that's why she wants to major in public health policy, because of her personal experience. It ends up saying, my goal is to enter government service as an advocate for public health. But probably her experiences with her aunt is leading her to study public health. Interest in PSU. She she took a tour, attended a program, and did a high school visit. So maybe she already has some type of relationship with the admission counselor. I'm not sure. She is a legacy. Her aunt attended. She also answered the supplemental questions. She talks about the PSU being a great fit. Her aunt attended. The top 5, she mentions her aunt as number 1 in the list. When we go to the school report, that's where I see that the school has only 90 seniors, so you can see that the counselor has a closer relationship with the students as opposed to being in a large public high school. The school only offers 12 AP courses, maximum of 3 per semester. She took a total of 5, and her last semester, she took 4. So she did, she took even more than the recommended. The letter of recommendation and great recommendations. The letter of recommendation gives me a little bit of more information as in regards to Marcela. This is something that I would have not known if the counselor didn't mention this. It mentions that she has a lot of responsibilities at home. Her parents are divorced and she lives with her dad actually. The dad brought her sister who was dying, terminally ill. He took her home. So she had, since 7th grade, she has been caring for her aunt, manager for the dad. The counselor says that she's very organized. She has everything in her agenda. So I think it's quite admirable for her. So young, has all these responsibilities. The big drop, it's mentioned in the essay that it was sophomore year, when the aunt died, and the counselor also mentions that. And I think since the parents are divorced and she lives with that, she also probably look at her aunt like a mother figure. So they had a very close relationship. At the end, there's a note from the coach. She had, looks like she was a recruit in the beginning, but not anymore. But they say that with her grades, just, solid academics, her grades, she's a legacy, she will be welcomed later as a walk-on. So those are some things that did stand out from Marcela's application.
Great, thank you. All right, and then our final applicant is Henry, and Payton will be presenting Henry to us.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. So I had Henry, and just kind of highlighting some things that we noticed off there, or I noticed off the application for him. Currently lives in Irvine, California. What was interesting that was noted a couple times throughout the application is that he does have 2 first languages, English and Japanese, which is very interesting. That'll tie into his essay that he wrote as well. It kind of brings it full circle. Both parents are married. Also, the father, as you see, is an engineer and went to Caltech, California Institute of Technology. Mother is a lawyer as well. Also, too, just when looking at the education of Henry, hold up here. So he did take 4 AP courses and then also had a few honors courses as well. He currently goes to the Galileo Science Academy, has over 2,000 students, which is located in Irvine. Also noted dual enrollment as well with University of California at Irvine in multivariable calculus, introduction to linear algebra, elementary differential equations as well. So you can see also with the AP courses that he took, very interested in engineering, future plans, prospective major computer engineering, career interest, artificial intelligence, a computer programmer, and wants to pursue his PhD. When looking at testing as well, you'll see in English scored a 610, math an 800. So a total of 1410. So you see math got a perfect score, which is very impressive. And that all again ties back into what he kept pointing out with engineering and his hopes and desires to pursue that career. So that did stick out a lot to me as well. You'll see too an improvement over the 4 years while he was in high school. You can see again struggled a little bit like Bené's student that she had, Dory, same kind of thing. So you'll see struggle a little bit in English, always was very high though in those math and science courses. But again, we see that improvement, which is a great thing to note. So you see started with a 3.4 weighted and then moved all the way to a 4.17 GPA. So again, improvement. That's always a good sign and something that we look at for sure at PSU. And then moving down, just some activities, things he was involved in. Again, I know I keep bringing up engineering, but president of the computer club, vice president and captain of the robotics club, as we mentioned previously, and then an intern with the IT department for the Aerospace Corporation. So again, really focusing in on that engineering route that he's looking to take, which again, PSU does specialize in. So that is something that's important. When looking at his essay, the essay was very well written. Didn't notice any grammatical errors, Stephanie, which was good. One thing to note, he did speak on behalf of his grandmother who struggles with Alzheimer's, who's going through Alzheimer's right now. He did find a way to code for an application to help her communicate better. And again, that's an amazing thing that he was able to do on his own while he was in high school. So he did highlight on that. Because she speaks Japanese, he does know Japanese well. He speaks about going to different homes and helping the elderly as well with that communication. So very, very interesting essay. Again, he is going through that engineering route once more. So very obvious what he's looking to do, which is great. And then again, quickly, just to kind of round it out, 2 things. One thing I am going to note is that his disciplinary action, this was also noted heavily within his letters of recommendation. But his freshman year of high school, he was put on probation for plagiarism within his global perspectives class. So did notate that. To kind of ease into his letters of recommendation, they did all three discuss that. I do think it's something that he was of concern that he did want to bring to our attention and to explain himself. The academy that he goes to, they do have very, very high integrity. So they did talk about, while that may be a note on his file, the 3 letters of recommendation that he had, 1 from the assistant dean of the school, 2 from professors or teachers within the school as well, did note that that was not a representation of the kind of student that he is. And then again, noted all of his strong academics that he has, again, within engineering, within his science, and within his math. So explain that he's a quiet student, but that he's an eager student to learn and to excel within his academics. One of the things to highlight in his letters of rec too was his reason for going to PSU. So one of his professors did ask him, you want to go to Caltech and follow in your father's footsteps. And while that is interesting in him, he was interested in pursuing PSU to get a well-rounded college experience, which I thought was interesting and worth noting as well. So that is Henry in a nutshell.
Awesome. And Peyton, I think that's Henry's disciplinary information is really important to show that we know students make mistakes and things happen, and hearing it in his voice first before we heard from the recommenders was a huge thing that he owned up to it and understood, and he just approached it in a really positive way and showed what he did post making that mistake. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, he just showed kind of that improvement following that occurring, and so that's something that we noticed, and that's a big thing. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, I would say we have 3 candidates who all bring something really wonderful to the table for PSU. They all have a lot to offer our institution, but unfortunately, we're at a process where we can only admit one of these students. And I say that I'm going to step out of the PSU role for a second and share that this isn't really how this happens. It's never a 1-for-1 situation. There's always a lot more flexibility than this. But for the sake of tonight's exercise, it's going to be a 1-for-1 situation. Okay, now back into PSU. Does anybody feel particularly strongly about a candidate that they would like to either advocate for or against in our class?
I just kind of wanted to point out with Henry, even though he didn't list like that community service, like working with the elderly, like he included it in his essay, he didn't include it in his activities. So that's why it's super important to make sure that you include a lot of stuff, because I'm suspecting that he probably didn't think that he needed, that was an activity, that was just something that he was doing on his own. So I liked that. It showed initiative to actually like start learning and coding and giving back to his community. I also want to mention with him as well that he did already take and sit for 2 AP exams, and he got a 5 on both of them. So that's also something to look at too. I mean, I'm not advocating one way or the other. I just wanted to kind of like throw that out there and say, that's what's so important about those personal statements and adding things like that.
Yeah, I think Henry is solid. 805 in the APs. He has the discipline, the plagiarism. I will be really concerned if that was senior year. If it was freshman year, he learned, never had additional issues. I will probably be fine with it. Freshman year, senior year, that will be a different conversation.
Okay. So we're feeling pretty good about it. I mean, he's strong academically. He's involved with his community. He's from California. he's interested in engineering and maybe research. So those are all things that the school's interested in pursuing more of. So I think we feel good about Henry in general.
It's a male.
And he's a male, yep.
Male. The school is 53% female. It's quite even, but it's still just like a slight, you know, they need a few more males.
And I think it's important to consider like the well-roundedness of the student, in my opinion, because some of them I was a little worried if it was beyond their interest, how motivated they would be. And liberal arts institutions, we are looking for well-rounded students, not somebody that's just motivated in their one area, because you have to take a wide variety of different courses and you have to be involved in a lot of different things. So as far as interest level, I would prefer a student that's much more well-rounded than maybe just focused in one area, because that would throw up some concerns on my radar in terms of motivation level for some of the students.
Yeah, Benet, I would agree. And while his unweighted GPA is lower than that 50% average because of that well-rounded, you know, with him being a well-rounded student, specifically speaking on Henry, it's not specifically just numbers that would get him, you know, in or out specifically, but it does help for him to be well-rounded for us to look at him that way as a whole. I do think, I agree. I think that's very important.
Mm-hmm. And I think honestly, and I love these exercises because it really gives students and families the opportunity to see the difficult decisions that admissions officers and schools have all the time. That is why it's so important to you, in my opinion, to get to know your admissions representatives, because I can tell you we can be strong advocates for students in terms of our, you know, our input and our decisions. And if we feel strongly about a student and we know you really well, I'm going with an applicant A over applicant B if I know you're a good fit for my institution. So that's another thing I would like to bring up. I wanted to bring up the essays too, because I'm like with Steffi on the essay pet peeves. Not one of these students did not put the wrong school in there, which is my major pet peeve. That's the reason why I want to go to blank, and it's the wrong institution. That is a major pet peeve for me, and not one of these applicants did. It was a little sad to me because I was looking for them, because I tell students all the time to make sure you change the name of the school, because that's my biggest essay pet peeve. So that was just also something I wanted to say.
Yeah, let's talk about the essays for a second. Oh, go ahead, Monica.
I was just going to kind of segue into from Benet talking about the essays. I felt like the essays were all strongly written. I really valued how each of them wrote about something that they were truly passionate about, because it really showed in their writing that they were passionate about that. And it also kind of correlated with a lot of their activities that they partook in. And I know, like Benet was mentioning, with being kind of singular within their interest, but it also goes to show that they were really passionate about that, and they're trying to, you know, do things that are going to make a change. So I really enjoyed reading each of the essays, and I thought they were really well written.
Agreed.
So we've talked about Henry a little bit. Let's talk about Marcela for a second, because she was the one who had the interesting note at the end of her application from the track coach, which is one of our Division I teams, that they were unable to continue recruiting her, but were really interested in having her as part of the team. How much will that sway your decision on her?
I think they still want her. You know, they might not advocate for her as a recruit, but they still want her. She has legacy. She's a Latina. I like her story. You know, and there's an explanation for her dropping in grades, that sometimes students do not include that in the additional information, or the counselors do not include that in the letter of recommendation. Something good for the students to know, that if you have a drop in your grades, I only look at numbers. You have to tell me your story. You have to tell me what happened, because there's always a reason. Well, not always, but let us know if something affected your grades.
When I saw that note, I kind of put myself in her shoes as a student, because I was started out as a recruited athlete. and that may have solidified my decision to attend one university over another. Now we have to put ourselves into her shoes because we don't know what other universities she's looking at. So now knowing that she's no longer a recruited athlete, is that going to sway her decision to wanting to be a member of PSU community? So I kind of thought about that as well. And I have, it correlated with me because I was a student athlete. So kind of being able to kind of weigh those options as her as a student, because she was being recruited. Now she's not a walk-in. So there goes that money opportunity for her as well. So just to kind of keep that in the back of our minds as well as an admissions committee.
I felt like, her aunt was an alum, and I think that the connection she had with her aunt will lead her into attend the university, whether she was actively being recruited or not. And as far, the school is, they meet full need. So as far as the finances, it will probably work out if she's admitted.
I think it's important as well to point out how important letters of recommendation are, because we learn so much in terms of the holistic aspect of the student beyond your GPA and test scores. So those are really the key parts for us to filling in those blank areas or those question marks we have. And every applicant's recommendation letter address some of those concerns. I know I had with Dory, Marlene had with her applicant. So, I mean, those things are so important. So choosing who writes your letter of recommendation is so important. I always recommend you get somebody that knows you really well, that's had you in multiple classes, maybe they can attend your academic and personal abilities and what you can bring to our campus community. So those parts I think were really important to highlight with that applicant as well as mine. And Henry, all three.
Yeah, definitely. And like with Henry, again, with that disciplinary action, while he brought it up first, which is a great thing, there's others that can at least vouch for that situation as well. So exactly, Renee, I agree.
Yeah, I want to hit on Dory quickly before we take a vote. I think Dory did something particularly well within her application, which was to alert us to that change in her academics. She was able to self-advocate about her late ADD diagnosis. She felt comfortable sharing that diagnosis with the admissions committee, which really primed us when we looked at her application or her transcript to understand where that came from. Does anyone want to speak more to Dory's application and how you feel about her in our community?
Yeah, I thought it was really, I agree with you. I thought it was really important because when I looked at the discrepancy between the ACT and the SAT, that immediately set off some red flags for me. And I'm like, this could be a potential score investigation type of situation. Like, hey, what happened? Did somebody else take the test for her? I mean, obviously that couldn't have happened, but that to explain that situation to me was very important because again, it set off some red flags. So I was going to immediately reach out to somebody and be like, what is happening here? Because you can have a little bit, but not something to that extent. So I did like that. She has shown demonstrated interest like off the chart. I mean, she is literally doing everything possible that we're offering as far as, tours and visits and meeting with us when we're on the road or whatever. She's a first generation college student, so I think that's also really important too. She does not have, her parents wouldn't have had experience going through this process. So her essays were well written. She showed demonstrated interest. It sounds like she had some pretty good interviews. Her grade point average is right, what is it? Yeah, it's like right in the middle part of that, middle 50%. She's challenged herself with AP and honors. She's involved in journalism. I think she had, did she have an award for journalism? I can't remember if yeah.
Yes.
So that's also something to note too. I really liked her advocating for herself.
Yeah. My only concern again with Dory is beyond journalism and her demonstrated interest, what's her motive, what is her overall outside of that area in terms of her motivation level and in terms of other classes. But I think she was pretty well rounded in her other classes as well. But I like it. The only other concern I had about the test scores too is she only took each one once. Like there, in my opinion, if I did, that average on the SAT and did really well on the ACT, I might want to retake the SAT in my opinion. But other than that, I mean, that was another thing that I thought was interesting. She only took the test each once. So
yeah, I think that's something we have to be careful about with not knowing what a student's situation is or timing is or ability to take the test again. And I would think especially if you've just been, you know, she took the test on time, she had to do all this extra work. It's a lot of extra effort for her doing this test. I think that's something that we try not to read too much into, right? Because there's just so much that we can't know about your situation. And I would say, especially for students who are going to be applying in the fall, to not worry about that quite so much, because we know you have much more opportunities to take your standardized tests. Okay, I feel like we've talked about all three. Let's do a quick vote, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Kathy to find out what the questions are from the audience. So I'm not going to vote, I'm just going to keep track, and also we have uneven numbers that way. Who would like to admit Dory? Who would like to waitlist Dory? Who would like to deny Dory? All right. Who would like to admit Marcela? Who would like to waitlist Marcela? Who would like to, did I say deny first? No, I said admit, right? I have denial. Well, you all want to waitlist her, so it doesn't matter. Who wants to admit Henry? I'm assuming everyone wants to admit Henry. Okay. So it looks like we'll be admitting Henry, waitlisting Marcela, and denying Dory. All three presented really wonderful opportunities, and we could advocate for all three to be admitted to our institution. But for what we need for this year, for the priorities that have been set for PSU, this year, the opportunity is going to go to Henry. Cool, thank you. Kathy?
That's just odd. This like never happens, right?
No,
like,
that was
100%. Never happens.
I was about to say we didn't have any fights or anything. Yeah,
That never happens.
never happens.
All right. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much. That was fascinating. I had a ton of notes that I was taking. Let me just see. So actually, I know the first question that has come up is if you could share briefly what decision, if you're able to, what decision would your university have made for Marcela, Dory, and Henry? And could you comment on that? If you could say, like, yeah, what would your school have done, knowing that they don't have to be categorized and everyone just gets one vote? So anyone want to talk about that?
I'll go first. We would admit everyone at the University of all three at the University of Alabama. We actually don't do holistic review. We just look at GPA and test scores. So we don't require letters of recommendation nor essays. So all three of these students met the GPA test score ranges. We would also ask Henry to probably go through a director's review, which is a typical process. You know, anytime students have suspension or something like that in their indication on their application, usually have a director's review where the student would have to write additional information on the situation. So, but as far as us, we would probably admit all three of these applicants.
We're very similar to Alabama as well, so not as a cop-out, but our review is very similar to how Alabama's is as well at the University of Mississippi. So we would admit all three as well, base it off of GPA and test score.
At Temple, we definitely would admit all three as well. Just like Benet was speaking about Henry as well, since he did have a disciplinary review. If that came across my application through my queue, I would automatically escalate that to my associate director, who handles all disciplinary and violations and like that. So if they had any other specific questions about the disciplinary action, they would reach out to the student, ask for further information, and go from there. But we would admit all three.
Yeah, we will admit all three of them. when there's a disciplinary violation, I usually send those students directly to committee to be discussed. But with that violation, he will probably be admitted.
Good. And let's see, ST or Lauren?
And we would probably end up admitting all three. Marcela, we might need to find out how much need she has. Bucknell's also need aware, and so that's something that we would have to consider as part of the process. And then Dory is somebody that we would want to keep an eye on grades to make sure that upward trend is continuing through her senior year. So she's one that we might put off making a decision on a little bit longer. You know, if she would apply, let's say early decision, we might defer her just to get another quarter or semester of grades to make sure with that rigor with her current trend that it was going to stay on target. But all three would receive a strong consideration if not being admitted.
Good. And then I think Stephanie.
So for Henry and Dory, those two would likely be admitted. Marcela would most likely be waitlisted because her grade point average is well below our middle 50%, even though her test scores are high. The 10th grade year, even though she explained it, would cause us to have pause and a real big red flag. So we would probably waitlist her. And if she applied early answer, we definitely would, we would waitlist her through that, and she wouldn't get a decision until March.
Until later. Oh, good. Actually, can you talk a little bit more about that term need aware and what that means and how that connects into admissions decisions?
Sure. So there's a couple of different financial aid terms to know in the process. There's typically need blind or need aware. Some places fall somewhere in the middle, but it usually you hear need blind or need aware. So in need blind decisions, your ability to pay, how much financial aid that you need is not considered at all in making admissions decisions. A good question to ask institutions that are need blind is how much of demonstrated need do they meet? Are they going to be able to fund you with as much need, as much aid as you're going to need going forward? So they don't consider financial need or ability to pay at all in their admissions process. Admissions makes their decisions and then financial aid packages as they're able to. In need aware situations, institutions are considering ability to pay and how much need a student might have in concurrence with, in conjunction with the decisions that they're making. So those institutions are making sure that their financial aid budget is matching the decisions that they're making. So it might mean that an institution can't afford to fund a student 100%. So they aren't going to offer admission to that institution. So it's just whether or not the amount of financial aid that you would need is considered alongside the admissions decision.
Oh, good, thank you.
And I'll add from a flagship school, from a large public, that need aware and need based, part of the decision in the application process is not really something that large flagship schools do, especially public schools. That is majority for private schools. We don't look at the students' need. At the University of South Carolina, I can speak for myself. I know with Benet from Alabama and Payton from Ole Miss, all three of us are SEC schools. I don't think any of us look at the student's ability not to pay as part of their admissions process. We just don't do that since we get state funding.
Oh, good. No, thank you. And actually, and here's another question that we had. If Plymouth Shores is planning to go test optional, as many schools are, how would then the SAT and ACT scores be viewed, especially with, I guess it was Dory was the applicant that kind of had the questionable, had the discrepancy between the SAT and the ACT score. So if we were going to make PSU going test optional this year, how would those scores, if students submitted them, be viewed? Anyone?
So if a school is test optional and a student submits their test score, then the test scores are considered with the application. So it gives the school a little more flexibility to say, well, maybe they just didn't know that we're test optional this year, to maybe not put as much emphasis on it. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that Dory didn't submit her test scores, and Henry did. We're not going to be looking for test scores in Dory's application. We're not going to have test scores be part of the conversation as we review her application because they're not there. But Henry's test scores are, so we can talk about his test scores. Same with Marcela, she did share hers, so we can talk about them as part of the process. So if a school is test optional and you send your test scores, they will use your test scores as part of their application. If a school is test optional and you choose to not send your test scores, they will not be looking for test scores or factoring that into their review process at all, or rely on all of the other academic information that we have. Now, there are also schools that are test blind, which means even if you submit a test score, they are not going to look at it at all.
Thank you. Let's see. And as far as, I just lost my, demonstrated interest is another question that we got. Can you talk about, first of all, what does that mean? What are some examples of demonstrated interest? I know you pointed those out for among the applicants. And does every school consider demonstrated interest as part of the admissions? Or if your schools do or do not?
I'll start. Just demonstrated interest in general is just really the students showing interest in that school and how many times they do that. That can be anywhere from going to a high school visit if your representative comes to your high school. That could be going to a college fair and you coming up to the booth and introducing yourself. That could be going on a campus visit. Any of those things would be considered demonstrated interest. Not all schools track demonstrated interest. We at Temple do not track in demonstrated interest just because we get so many applications. Now, on the flip side of that, if a student comes up to me and speaks to me about how really interested they are in Temple, they follow up with me via email, I'm going to then go into their application and I'm going to make a note of that. And then I'm also going to make a note of that I want to read that student's application because I now have, a commonality with that student. They've, showed interest to me. So I have a better relationship with that student to give that a better, overlook for the application. So I'm not sure with everybody else how you view demonstrated interest, but that's kind of what that's like.
I agree, Monica. I thought it was interesting that no three of the applicants apply. Well, there's no early decision at PSU, but another way of demonstrating interest is obviously early decision if the school has early decision. Because that's a strong indicator in terms of where your top choice. We didn't talk about early decision because PSU didn't have it, so I don't know if anybody has any questions about that, but I thought that was interesting that we didn't offer early decision at PSU because sometimes they do put that in case studies in terms of another way of demonstrating interest.
Yeah, every time a student sends me an email, I can keep track in the system. We use something called TargetX. We don't use Slate. But, that's another way to track interest, like those emails, my first choice, things like that. I do keep track. It doesn't necessarily is going to lead the student into an admit, but when it makes a difference is when we go to committee, we see, has the student been in contact with me? We can see these emails that have been sent to the students. I can see if they have been opened or not. So that's another way of tracking interest. Do you see all my emails? Do you open them? Are they unopened? So that's another way of tracking interest. When it makes when it might make a difference is when the student goes to committee, basically, that interest.
There's a couple different reasons why schools might track demonstrated interest, or a couple of different ways they might use demonstrated interest. One of the big ways is we're trying to guess who's going to show up, who's going to enroll. We're trying to make a class and make sure that we fill all the seats in our class. So for some institutions, demonstrated interest can play a big role in deciding who they admit, because they know that student has a higher likelihood of enrolling. It might get used in a waitlist process where it is a one-for-one offer piece. We want to make sure that we fill those spots quickly. Or it might be used so that institutions know if their programming is working or not. So we might track, did you come to this type of visit and then apply? Did you come to this type of visit and apply and then enroll? So there's a couple of different ways that institutions might use demonstrated interest throughout their process. So that's another good question to ask the schools you're interested in applying to. Do you track demonstrated interest, and how much does it matter in the process? My former vice president who just retired said, you know, sometimes submitting an application is them demonstrating interest. So there's lots of different ways for you to do that.
Wow. Oh, no, thank you. All right, and then one more question as we wrap up the afternoon or the evening, and just to get some advice from each of you. So as we move into the upcoming application cycle, what advice do you have for rising seniors and their families as they begin the application process? What words of wisdom can you share with them about applying to colleges or relieving some of the anxiety and stress surrounding it? Maybe I'll kind of go in order from as I can see everyone. So maybe I'll start with Vinay first.
Well, we feel for the families these days because this is an unusual situation in terms of the college application process. So believe us when we say we feel for all of you right now that are going through the college process, and we're trying to be as understanding as we can because we know that you have challenges right now given the current situation. In a normal admission cycle, obviously, big piece of advice I would give you is do things early. Start the process early. If our deadline's November 15th, don't submit an application December 1st. Okay, so start earlier, the better off you can be. 2, if and when you can, visit campus. I can't tell you that's a huge part of the process. Is visiting campuses that really will make you feel like you really fit on a college campus, and always visit school when it's in session. I say that all the time. If you can, those are 2 huge pieces of advice I can. And 3, and finally, get to know your admissions counselors. We love talking to students. We get paid for it, but that's what we do. We love it. I was in admissions 24 years almost if I didn't love what I do. So please get to know us. We can be your greatest advocates. We love talking to students, and be professional with us. Establish a professional email address too, if you guys don't have that. And also take an active role in the process. Students take an active role in the process as well as the parents. So those. I went well above my time limit. I had 4 pieces of advice. Sorry. That was a box there. Sorry about that.
You covered it, Vinay.
Anyone else want to add anything? That was one great advice. Anyone else want to add, jump in? Anything else?
Yeah, just to apply. I mean, I get a lot of emails a lot of times with students saying, should I wait to apply until I get this specific score or whatnot? At least with us, with Ole Miss, like Vinay, go ahead and send everything in. Send everything in. Ole Miss specifically, we don't send denial letters. We send not yet letters, we like to call them. So send everything that you have in, get it in early. For any reason we need to see higher test scores, we'll let you know and continue to work with you throughout that process. But yeah, like Vinay said, get it in early. That way you have it out of the way too, and you just have everything lined up, ready to go.
Yeah, and also this year, we might not be able to go visit your high school in person, but schools are so welcoming this year. They're so flexible. You can have, reach out to your counselor. You will probably be able to have a one-on-one conversation, interview, like Zoom, something like this. And that's a great way to get to know the school if you're not able to visit in person. And another a piece of advice, read your emails, not just because of interest, because there's a lot of information that you might be missing out, especially scholarships. Sometimes they have early deadlines. So you need to read those emails.
So there's a couple of pieces of advice that I would give. One, Bené kind of hit on it, creating a professional email, but what I would actually suggest you doing is say making an email address, Stephanie Creaseman, college search at Gmail, so that you use that for all your applications, and you know that that one email address is where all of your college application information is going to be sent, so you know to check that. The other advice I would also give is when you are doing these essays, we all know, and like Bené said, and we feel for you, we know that you're going through stuff with COVID, but if you're going to write about COVID, I know Common App actually has a little section on there now that is going to have like a personal statement about COVID. You're going to write how you're affected with it or affected by it. I wouldn't say stuff like super negative, like my prom got canceled, or, you know, I had to cancel this trip or the study abroad. Maybe taking the approach of, this is what I learned. I decided that I was going to take up cooking, and like I've learned all this new cuisine, and here's what I want to do. I've decided I want to go to Portugal because I've learned how to cook, you know, their particular type of cuisine, and like kind of tie it into what you learned from. The other thing that I will tell you is follow your universities that you are very interested in on social media. Yes, the emails come out, but social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, that's where you're going to get the real-time announcements and real-time information. And if you can't go to campus, if we're not opening up for visitors, for outside visitors, I know the University of South Carolina has an Instagram takeover by a student every Tuesday. It's a takeover Tuesday, and you go to class with the student, you go to the residence halls, you eat, you know, so it's a way to actually see campus if you can't necessarily get there. So that's really important. Follow Instagram. I know, I know for myself, I know Bené and Payton also have our own Instagram accounts, official Instagram accounts for our university. So find your admissions rep and follow them on Instagram too, because again, we'll repost that information as the university is releasing it. It's really important, with it being a fluid situation right now, that you are following the most, like the official university social media to get that information quickly.
Yeah, that's great.
To follow up with Stephanie, what she was mentioning, just within the world that we're living in today, obviously, we can't go to campus and check out our favorite campuses or just to get a feel what life would be like on that campus. But all of us are doing everything virtually. I mean, I know you guys are probably sick of doing everything virtually, but that's your next best option to get some type of feel of what a campus is going to be like. I know it's not authentic. You're not getting that real time, you know, one-on-one interaction, but it's there to get a start. And then hopefully by maybe, you know, Christmas time or the spring semester, there's some time to go ahead and be able to visit some of those top choices that you're looking into. I know it's not ideal, but it's next best thing. Again, another piece of advice is just to really ask questions. If you are struggling with something, if you just have some small question, reach out to, you know, an admissions representative in your area, and we're really happy to answer your questions. That's what we're here for. We want to do everything that we can do to help you. And again, like Stephanie mentioned, you know, following social media accounts is the way to go. I follow all of ours, and that's really how I get updated before I'm told via email certain things that are going on. Again, you're going to get like student takeovers. I actually did an Instagram takeover for our admissions department at one point. So everything is happening via social media right now because, you know, not being able to step foot on campus. So definitely check out those things.
I would encourage students to remember that as much as talk about COVID and not being able to be on campus is dominating our news cycle and our lives right now, that this has been one part of your high school experience. So using the next couple of weeks before applications go live to really reflect on all of your high school experience, all of the things that you've accomplished, all of the things you've enjoyed, all the things you're going to continue enjoying, so that you make sure you present your full high school experience to us in the application process. As you saw tonight, as we read these applications, we do get a lot of information about what your story is. And I wish I had counted the number of times one of my colleagues said something about, well, I learned the student's story. I heard their story. I heard their passions. I heard their interests. Because we want to get to know you as much as you're trying to get to know us right now. So take some time to reflect on all the things that you've done in high school, all the things that you have coming up, and all the things that you want to get out of college to make sure you're not missing anything when you fill out those applications.
Great. Well, thank you. Excellent, excellent advice. Let me just see if I can share my slideshow. No, I don't think I can. No, well, thank you very much. And actually, Loren, I think you said at the beginning of the presentation that you would have an inquiry form that we will send out along with our link to tonight's webinar. So if students are interested and want to have a conversation with any one of you, that they'll have your contact information, correct?
And so that lets students put in their contact information, and then we'll get that to the individual colleges to get you on mailing lists or get you in contact with the right person.
Perfect. And that's for all of FRAC, correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you all so very much for attending and just sharing some great advice, some great feedback. If for whatever reason we didn't get to your questions this evening, you can go ahead and email them to me. It's Hart, H-A-R-T, at scoreatt.com, and just send those to me and I will go ahead and see if I can get those answered. We have 3 more sessions with FRAC coming up with some different presenters, so you'll get to meet the different colleges in the small group environment throughout the next 3 weeks, excuse me. Next Wednesday, 5 p.m., we're going to have another strong college application presentation with a different group of panelists. Then we're going to have on July 22nd, Life and Athletics at the Big Ten universities. And then finally, we will round out our series with talking about liberal arts, the importance and value of a liberal arts degree. Further details about these webinars are available on our website, scorewebinar.com. And again, you can always reach out to me if you have any questions. So once more, I'd like to go ahead and thank our panelists for your enthusiasm and for sharing your words of wisdom tonight. And thank you all very much. And to our audience, have a great night, and we'll hope to see you next week at 5 p.m. Thank you.